Hello, Brett. How are you?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you, Nidan. How are you?
I'm fine too. So, friends, we have Brett here. So, let me introduce about him. Brett is an entirely self-taught mental health educator, trainer, paradigmologist, and founder of Pathway to Insight. He has an unconventional approach to mental health that is more practical and easier to realize for his clients. When Brett had his insight into the nature of paradigms in 2015, he took the time to fully absorb and explore what he had realized. Since then, he has uncovered innovative ways of sharing mental health from a paradigm perspective. Indeed, Brett was surprised to discover it is paradigms that provided the principles of mental health. Brett acknowledges that with the conventional way of understanding your mental health, you aren't able to get the aha moment you need. He believes that every person deserves to know the guiding principle of mental health, live a healthier, happier, resilient, and meaningful life. When people insightfully recognize the guiding principles, they live a more fulfilling and generous life. That's wonderful to know about you, Brett. So, welcome once again. Just tell me how did you indulge into, how did you start exploring these paradigms?
Good question. Um, it came about in a very unexpected way.
Okay.
I was having a conversation with somebody who's well versed in the three principles of mind, thought, and consciousness. Right? And it was an unplanned conversation. Right? And the other person wanted to know how I was doing learning about these three principles. And I told them that I'm struggling a bit here. I seem to be experiencing a wider spectrum of feelings, and I'm getting affected by those. And he said to me, well, yes, you do experience a wider spectrum of emotions, right? But you get less affected by it. Right? So that was an interesting idea for me that I never thought about. I didn't realize you can have feelings and not be affected by them. Right? So that gave me a direction that I didn't know existed. I had no idea it was there. Right? So, and then a little while afterward, the person I spoke with came up with a seemingly very simple sentence, and he said, this is a single paradigm. Okay. And in that moment, something happened to me, and I had no idea what had happened. It was just completely out of the blue. And I knew something had changed. I didn't know what it was, but something changed. Now, I had no reference how to describe the change at that time. And so I took my time trying to work out what it was, whether I can put words to it, whether I could describe it, that kind of thing. And it took me at least 6 months before I was beginning to be able to. Right? And then I realized the insight that I had was what might be called, I think I've just uncovered the paradigm of paradigms.
Okay. Okay.
But so I was starting to see the world through the lens of a paradigm, and rather than without, like, okay, this is what's going on, this is what's going on. And all this knowledge that would come into my mind was something I never came across before. Nobody ever taught me this. So now I don't know why me. It was just a few words from this coach, and then I had an insight that was like, oh, that's how it happened. So I was able to learn about paradigm from a book, not from another person. I mean, this code didn't tell me anything about paradigm. That was the only word he said. And I was able to see it, but I didn't do anything to see it. That's where I am.
Okay, so that's why you call yourself as a paradigmologist.
It was a job I didn't sign up for, but I'm glad I did.
Okay, so let us get into the definition of what exactly is paradigm all about, right?
Okay. I hope I will start with something a little bit easy to grab, and then we can take a deeper look at it.
Sure.
See how we go. Okay, so one of the most popular examples of a change in paradigms is the notion of the Earth being at the center of the universe, and then at some point we realize that the Earth is not at the center of the universe. We realize that the sun is a star and it's at the center of our solar system.
Yes.
Okay, that's the easy part. That's why people call it a worldview, which I agree with 100%, but there's more to it. So, but if we take a closer look at it, right, given what we understand about the sun today, right, we realize that the sun never really changed. Right?
Yes.
It had always functioned the same way for how many millions of years. Right?
Yes.
So the interesting thing is that it's not the sun that changed, but it's the people's perception of the sun that did.
Yes.
Right? So we can now say that it's not the sun that had a change in paradigm, it's inside the person's mind that had the change in paradigm.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right? So that's one good news. We have the ability to change paradigms. Right? Okay, can you imagine what it would be like if we didn't have the ability to change paradigms? We would be sticking with the same way of thinking all the time. So another interesting thing about the sun is that because the sun didn't change, right, it therefore doesn't have the ability to determine the change in paradigm of what was happening inside the person. Okay, so when a person is in a particular paradigm about the sun, right, it was previously seen as a planet, it traveled on a space boat, a strange an idea it is today, but it may stand back at the time. It became clear that there is a way to think about the sun that appears to be exclusive to that particular paradigm the person is in. Okay, so while they are in that paradigm, the ability to think that the sun is a star and everything revolves around it, right, could not be thought of.
Yes.
So a paradigm has the ability to give you thinking, right, but only certain types of what do you think about. And there are other ways to think about the sun, right, that's not available if you are in that paradigm.
Okay.
Okay. So when a person switched paradigm, what happened was that now this person had access to thinking about the sun in ways that they could not have had when they were in the other paradigm.
Okay. Okay.
So that was really interesting to me because it helped me to not get too close to the sun, if you like, because it can't do anything to make me change the way I think. It's what's happening inside. And when I stay there when they change the paradigm, then I'm able to think about it. That might be more reflective of what actually happened with the sun. In other words, what happened in our psychology is independent of what happens in the physical universe. Right? So when you stay independent, you then have the ability to more easily switch paradigm as and when you need to.
Okay.
if your psychology is connected to the physical universe, that it's going to be much more difficult to try and get away from the thinking that you realize it's not helpful to you anymore, or that kind of thing, because they're disconnecting to it. When they're disconnecting, it's not independent. When you see the independent, it's like, oh, I can find something that might be of more help to me. So I see paradigm as framework for thought. Okay, because when you're in one paradigm, you're going to get certain types of thought which may or may not be helpful to you. When you switch paradigm, then you get a different set of thoughts. And in another paradigm, you get a different set of thoughts. Just like, oh, okay. So the thought is what we experience through life. But those thoughts arise because of the paradigm that we are in the moment.
Okay.
How are we doing so far?
Yes. I am able to understand how you have explained about the sun, and our paradigms shifted about it, but the sun was same from the millions of years. So in the same way, even when we are able to shift the paradigm, things are changing, right? Did I get it, Brett? Okay. So can you please tell more about how do we understand what paradigm is, and certain things, or what are the benefits of changing it?
Okay. There are lots of paradigms. I don't know if it's infinite, but it seems like it. What's really interesting about paradigm for me is that it can establish whether there are principles. Okay, so we now have the principle of why the sun is in the middle of the solar system and everything revolves around it. I'm not a cosmologist, I can't say what those principles are, but there are people who know that there are such principles. Okay, so when you have a paradigm, right, you're going to have certain thoughts, right? And that thought, it seems like it correlates with what's happening in the physical universe, right? I mean, we have eyes, we can observe things. For example, we can observe that it looks like it's the sun that rises from the east and sets in the west. Or it looks like to our eye that if we look at the horizon, maybe out in the sea, it looks flat. So we can say the earth is flat. Okay. So, but every once in a while, somebody discovers what I call a true paradigm. Okay, so the true paradigm is where we can establish principles. So, for example, let's use the flat Earth, round Earth dichotomy. With the flat Earth, it makes sense to have thoughts like, oh, the ship needs those great big massive anchors that weigh very, very heavily. Recently, I spoke with a friend who visited Portugal, right? And she stored those massive anchors. Right? They don't use them anymore, but they still use anchors, but not as big or as heavy, because they were afraid of a ship that might fall off the edge of the earth. So they need something really heavy. And I said to her, it's nice to hear about a relic of the old paradigm.
Okay.
So when there is a flat earth, we can see that it makes sense up to a certain point. Now, once you reach beyond that point, there's going to be things that arise that doesn't make sense anymore. For example, where do the clouds come from when it arises from above the seeming like the edge of the universe, edge of the planet, or from the edge of the horizon? Okay, so there needs to be an explanation. Where could they? Another one is, if there is an edge, why do we still have all this water? Then why is it not all the water falling up the edge, and therefore there's no water left over?
Yeah.
There are raised questions like, I don't know how to explain it anymore. I can't answer those questions well enough. So that's a sign of what some people might call a question from that paradigm that's not answerable anymore. Okay, Thomas Kuhn, who wrote the book The Structure of Scientific Revolution, that's a book about paradigm, although quite heavy. He called it a crisis because we've now got a question that we can't answer off the bat. Okay, so with that question, what tends to happen is people try to come up with another theory that's not based on that paradigm. Those theories are what I call the band-aid approach. We try, here's the question, we can't answer it, but it needs to be answered. So we kind of cover it up with a band-aid.
Okay.
So when we cover it with a band-aid, then it was like problem solved. But it doesn't last long, because when you cover something up, usually there's something else that crops up as well. And then it's like, oh, I can't solve that one. So we come up with another theory to cover that one. And then we come up with another theory, and in the end, we come up with so many theories that contradict one another. It's like, oh, I just can't do this anymore. It's too much, there's too many inconsistencies going on. Okay, so until there's been a change in paradigm, for example, one person going from a flat earth to a round earth, then suddenly all those questions that couldn't be readily answered by the paradigm now could be, because when it's round, you realize the water's not falling off the edge anymore. Yes. There's no such thing as falling off. Oh, that makes sense now. Okay, so it answers questions, more difficult questions to answer. Okay, but at the core paradigm, though, there's what I call an underlying assumption, or some people might call it an exemplar or an example. But for example, the flat earth is, the example would be the earth is flat. Okay, I'm not saying whether it's true or not, right? But because we can come from that place as a paradigm, the thinking that we think is based on the idea of the earth is flat. So it makes sense to have the thinking, if you think the earth is flat, is true. Okay, now in a different paradigm, we have a different exemplar, a different underlying assumption. In this case, the earth is round. Okay, from that place, we can think about it as if the earth is round, and then things start to make sense. It answers the questions that the other paradigm could not answer without theory that's not consistent with the paradigm it's in. Okay, so when you have a true paradigm, for example, the earth is round, the thing that we can think up is very beneficial to us, and we can take it a long, long way. Okay, so a paradigm had a underlying assumption built in. Explore it, see if it makes sense, see if it answers the question that you couldn't answer before, and then at some point along the way, it may establish principles. But where principle comes in is that there's no question that cannot be answered by that paradigm.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I'm not saying that we can answer every question straight away, but if we keep exploring that paradigm, keep going further in it, and then it's like, at some point, the question will get answered. So that's where principles arise from. So when you have a paradigm that has principles, then you don't need to change paradigms anymore, because you've got the paradigm that has principles and can answer any question about that particular subject matter that we are thinking about.
Okay, okay. So is that the reason, Brett, you have mentioned on your website, conquer the world of thought, no techniques, no methods, no willpower, and no practices?
Yeah, exactly. So So when you are in a paradigm and you're having a human experience, let's say you're anxious or you're stressed out or you're burnt out or you're frightened or fearful, right? For most of my life, I'm thinking, these are not good emotions. I need to do something. Okay, so they may think of, to come up with a technique or come up with something to do because I don't want to feel those feelings again. And sometimes it looks like I need to put some time to it. I need to see somebody who can help me with those emotions and so on. Okay. There's nothing wrong with that because I've done it myself. And sometimes it seems like it's helpful. And sometimes I do the same thing and it's like, this is not helping me as much. I'm still got those emotions. What can I do instead? So I'm going from one thing to another, from another thing to another thing, moving all kinds of ideas until I can do something about it. Okay, so, and then because I'm learning about the principles of mind, thought, and consciousness, right? It's interesting that mind, thought, and consciousness doesn't tell you what to do with those emotions. What they do is explain why you had those emotions in the first place.
Okay.
Okay. So as I looked into them, I mean, it took me a long time before I could understand it because I can see why it's a very difficult subject for people to learn about. So eventually I started to see that whatever I think, I feel. That's quite a widely accepted premise, if you like, of why we feel the way we feel. Because when we have that thinking, we feel that thinking. So suddenly, it now looks like instead of doing something about the feeling, it looks like we've now got a cause for the way we feel the way we feel. Okay, so thinking is now seen as the cause. Right? So because thinking is now seen as the cause, we now need to do something about the thinking that we're having. Okay. But the problem is, all that thinking, if we didn't know anything about paradigm, came from a paradigm in the first place.
Okay.
So if we focus,
feeling is the effect, thought is the cause, and the thought has come from the paradigm.
Yes, but however, learning about thought, it kind of, I started to see that what Chitty who uncovered the principle, he was talking about thought in a very different way to thinking. Okay, they were talking about the power of thought or the principle of thought. Okay, so, and I started to realize I was getting confused between thought and thought. Thought, content wise, which is what I now call thinking, and there's the power of thought, which is not content based. Okay, so the way I say thought today is that it's kind of like it's empty, but not nothing. Okay, but there's nothing in it. Okay, so for example, if you think of a glass, right, there's nothing in the glass until you put something in it. And then when you put something in it, you can then drink out of it.
Yes.
Okay, so what you put in it is the thinking. So the principle of thought is not something that can determine what you think. All the principle of thought does is whatever you think in the moment, that's going into the glass, and then the glass itself creates the emotion.
Okay.
So I'm like, oh, okay. So thinking goes into thought to produce the emotion. Oh, okay. So now that we've got a more full equation, right? The question changes because we're now factoring in the principle of thought. Okay. So instead of targeting thinking and see what we can do about it, because if you target thinking, it makes sense to think, how do I get rid of that thinking? How do I get the thinking I want? How do I have thinking that will give me the feeling that I want to feel? Okay. But now that we've got the principle of thought included, it raises another question, which is, okay, given that my emotion is coming from the principle of thought, it must rule out coming from something other than thought. Okay, so I'm like, oh, this is interesting. So if it rules out coming from something other than thought, it means that the circumstances and the events that I go through in life does not have the ability to give me the feeling. Look, oh, this is an interesting idea. So for most of my life, I've been very shy because I've been having lots of thinking about how other people would perceive me because of my cochlear implant, because of my profound deafness, right? And as a result, it looks to me that if I don't meet that person, I don't have to deal with that thinking at all.
Okay.
Right? But now that what I feel is my thinking going into thought and giving me the emotion, is therefore not my thinking going into what other people might think about me, giving me the emotion. I'm like, oh, so it doesn't work that way. I thought that's how it worked, but I didn't realize it. So now that we've got the principle of thought, it rules out that how other people might think of me can give me a feeling. So as a result, over time, I lost my shyness and I was able to be more outgoing, talking to other people, which I'm very grateful for, because I cannot believe how much I can now learn from other people instead of not meeting them because I'm too shy to meet them.
Okay.
Because they've got their own mind, goodness knows what they think. I would like to know what they think. And now they're also interested in what I think. So we can have a really nice conversation together.
Yes.
So my life has been enhanced by realizing the principle of thought is in action and not something other than thought. So we have two paradigms of human experience now. So this is one of them that has the principle of thought included, and the other one doesn't. So the other one is not a helpful one because it makes me do the thing that I can no longer do what I want to do. It can also the other way around, which is I could do things that I didn't want to do. I don't want to be horrible to people. I don't want to be unkind to others. I want to be able to respect other people for who they are, instead of being judgmental about them or being critical about them. Because once the principle of thought is included, then I'm like, oh, okay, everything about my own experience is happening inside and not anything else. And the interesting thing about the human experience is that when I'm coming from that place, I'm very comfortable with whatever feeling I am feeling, whatever experience I am experiencing. Right? And because I'm comfortable with it, I don't need to do anything about them.
Okay.
So I don't need technique. I don't need to avoid feeling a particular feeling. I don't need to feel a particular feeling that I want to feel. Oh, that's interesting. So in one paradigm, there's no need to do anything about your the experience I'm having. But in the other paradigm, I need to do something about it.
Okay.
So that's why in my work, I don't need to do technique or method or practices or effort. All it takes is an insight, meaning if you can realize what's in this paradigm, you're going to start using that paradigm more and more and more because of the benefit it brings to you as an individual, right? Compared to the other paradigm, which is going to contain technique, working on things, going to have to put time into it, going to have to put your energy into that kind of thing, which So when I talk about the differences between those two, it
Okay.
becomes so evident which of those two is more preferable to the individual.
Okay. Okay. So that's where doing and being comes into the picture.
Yes.
Could be. Okay, so that's awesome. Now I understand why you have mentioned on your website, conquer the world of thought, no techniques, no methods, no willpower, and no practices. And you have created ETI, which is Pathway to Insight membership. Could you please tell about it? Brett?
Yes. It's all about mental health, but it's not just about mental health. It's also about resilience, confidence, love, joy, all kinds of things. Because before I was like, let me focus on mental health, but by focusing on mental health, it looks like it's separate from confidence, it's separate from resilience, it's separate from love, all kinds of things. But now that we have the principles behind the human experience, the entirety of the human experience, we no longer have to separate them.
Okay.
So we can now put it all together into a single body of knowledge. So when we're working on mental health, we're also working on confidence without doing anything different. So the membership is about teaching the principles of it, which is mindful consciousness, but more about the implications of that. So what are the implications of it? One of them being, can you see the difference between what's in this paradigm and what's in the other paradigm? Right? And the more you can see the differences, right, and the premise that gives rise to each of those two paradigms, right, then the person starts to realize, oh, there's something in that paradigm that's going to help me that this paradigm won't be able to as much. It may seem like it was, or rather it gives the impression that it does, but when they carry the activity out, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the inside out paradigm has the much higher effect. So, and there's many different ways of talking about it, right? So we don't work on feeling, we don't work on thinking, which it just takes one insight, just one insight to realize what's in that paradigm. So that way I can say we're only one insight away from being a mentally healthy, functioning person.
Okay. Okay.
But equally, because there are two paradigms of thinking, if you like, because everything happens inside, we are also one paradigm away from what I call an out state, which works the other way. We go into that other paradigm. It's very invisible, it's very innocent, and it still happens to me every day, just a little bit less than I used to do it. So I'm very grateful for that. So we talk about all the different ways in which we talk about mental health. That for me, the widely conventional approach to mental health is that if I feel this particular way, then I will be mentally healthy. Or if I feel this particular way, I will be confident. If I feel good enough, then I will be able to be resilient, kind of thing. All those qualities seem to have a condition based on how one person feels. Okay. With the inside out paradigm, I propose this the other way around. So it raises an interesting question, which is, would you rather have a feeling to be mentally healthy? Or would you rather be mentally healthy regardless of how you feel?
Okay.
Would you rather have confidence regardless of how you feel? Would you rather be resilient regardless of how you feel? Because as you think about it, then there's the sense of you can do more regardless of how you feel, rather than having a particular feeling to have those particular qualities.
That's
So
awesome.
that's what the membership is about.
Okay. Awesome, awesome. So thank you very much, Brett. You have a different school of thought altogether about paradigms, and it was wonderful knowing about your journey, about this concept. And I thank you very much for sharing your experience and time. And you're doing a great job. Thank you very much once again.
Yeah, fair.
Okay,
Okay.
Brett. Thank you.